Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them will the Son of Man also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. May I speak in the name of the living God.
Amen.
God is in the business of turning nobodies into somebodies, said Peterson in The Message. Abraham didn't get God's attention by being a saint. He got God's attention by being someone who allowed God to make him somebody when he was nobody special to begin with. God said, I'm going to make you the father of many nations. And Abraham, who was 100 years old, married to his barren, beloved Sarah, said, I believe you. He didn't say, look, Lord, by any account, that ship has sailed. Nor, in Buechner's vivid phrase, did he say, how could a couple with one foot in the grave have the other foot in the maternity ward? No, he said, count me in. Hoping against hope, wrote St. Paul, Abraham believed he'd become the father of many nations, that Sarah would give rise to nations, believed that God could give life to the dead and call into existence the things that do not exist. And on such faith, in the face of daunting odds, the door to the covenant, the door to the future swung open. When I was a student at the General Theological Seminary in New York City, as part of our education, they took us to a series of different worship services in different traditions to expose us to different ways of approaching God. We went to an Orthodox Jewish service where I remember being shepherded with the other women up a back staircase to sit in the balcony where we looked down on the heads of our classmates and the men as the words of the Torah came up from below. We went to a Syrian Orthodox service whose worship spoke through beauty in gold brocade vestments glittering in candlelight, billowing incense and the tinkling of bells. The Syrian archbishop was visiting, and I remember his smile as I knew to bend and kiss his ring. But the very first service we went to was a storefront Pentecostal church in Harlem, a long ride uptown. The service was already in progress when we arrived and continued after we left. We were ushered into rows of metal folding chairs in a low-ceilinged rectangular room. There was a low stage at one end of the room, and several women dressed in white with white lace on their heads located around the room. Who are these women? I asked, like, the questioner in Revelation. Who are these robed in white, and whence have they come? They help people who are slain in the spirit, a classmate more versed in such things told me. I was 26 years old and way out of my neighborhood for the very first time, feeling very uncertain and trying not to look it. People were pleasant, but they knew and we knew that we were visitors there. I was holding out hope for the preacher, for a soulful sermon, for a point of connection when it happened. Oh, no. The senior pastor was giving way. No, I wanted to hear the senior pastor, the real deal, the main guy. But he was turning to this young man up there with him on the stage, encouraging him to get up and come forward. And this poor man looked about as happy about this as I was. Oh, no. But the senior man's authority could not be denied. So the young man stood up in his new brown suit. He walked forward, nervous and uncertain, and he tried saying all the right things, but it just lay there. And I thought, wow, well, this sure isn't what I was expecting. God, what a disappointment. He was floundering. Just floundering. He knew it and we knew it. When suddenly he stopped. And he turned away from us, suspended in some kind of inner debate. And then he turned back around and he said, I haven't always been a preacher. And the change was palpable. People were like, okay, there were a couple amens coming out. In fact, I'd never have been seen around people like you. And people were like, yeah, we can relate to that. Okay. I did drugs. Congregation paused to consider this a minute. I have the needle marks in my arms. And I did all the nasty, ugly things you think of when you think of people doing drugs. And there was silence as our collective minds considered what disgusting things these might be. I haven't always been a preacher. Where was this going, we were wondering. This is sin, not salvation. So many of us were thinking it. It was almost audible. Who did this guy think he was? Standing up here in church with a microphone in his hand. I haven't always been a preacher. What do I do when I see the people who used to know me? They see me in my suit, and I know what they're thinking. They're thinking, who do you think you are being a preacher? We remember you when you were lower than the low. What do? Do I cross the street? People are going, And he goes, no, I don't. I hold my head up and I walk on by because I am not ashamed of Christ. Amen. I am not ashamed of Christ. He said, slamming his heel against the floor. I am not ashamed that Christ has set me free. I am not ashamed that he has washed me clean. I thank him every day. I'm not standing up here because I'm good. I'm standing up here because he's good. And I am not ashamed of Christ. Right? The place went wild. Tears were streaming down our faces. People were falling out. The women in the white were on the move. We were in the presence of God. This was the gospel in real time. He was Matthew, the despised tax collector, leaving the booth behind. He was the fifth married Samaritan woman at the well. He was Zacchaeus falling out of the tree. And we were ashamed. Not of him, but of us. Ashamed of having judged this man for doing things we told ourselves we'd never do. For doing things we'd never admit doing, if we had, for fear of encountering people as judgmental as we were. We had found him wanting. God had found him worthy. Oh, it was a searingly wounding and healing experience I have never forgotten. No wonder Lent starts with the call to deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow him. Because until we deny the story we want to tell, which is that all's well with us, no flies on me, we can't follow him. We certainly can't witness to him because all we have is platitudes. Like, what's he ever done for us? What have we ever needed him to do? Unlike this poor preacher, we're just AJ squared away. We're Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way. Well, I love Mary Poppins, but it's a movie, saints. That's not real life. None of us are practically perfect. If we want the new life that Jesus died and rose to give us, we're going to have to take up our cross like that young preacher did and sacrifice our pride. Sacrifice our fear of being seen as we are, wounded, vulnerable, and in need of saving. Like Abraham and Sarah, we have to be willing to sacrifice our dignity and risk looking foolish because there's no way to deny that we can't do it on our own. Every story of conversion is the story of a blessed defeat, wrote C.S. Lewis. Every story of conversion is a story of blessed defeat. We must surrender our arrogance, our desire to go it alone. We must surrender to God's love. It's God's love that changes us. God's love that turns dying into rising, shame into grace, that turns 100-year-old couple into parents of a child named He Laughs. Don't be ashamed of what God has done for you. Don't be ashamed of your journey. Revel in your blessed defeat. God turns nobodies into somebodies. That's what God does, saints. That's what God does. Don't be ashamed to show us what Easter looks like in you. Blessed Lent. Amen.